Millions of Americans carry this pistol every single day. Police departments issue it. The military adopted it. And right now, courtrooms across the country are deciding if it can fire all on its own, without anyone touching the trigger. If you own one, you need to know exactly what is happening before you carry it again. Some guns become famous for winning competitions. Some become famous for looking good on a movie poster. The SIG Sauer P320 became famous for something bigger than both of those things combined. It became the standard. The United States military looked at pistols from every major manufacturer and picked the P320, giving it new names, the M17 and the M18. That decision alone told the entire firearm industry something important. If the military trusts this design enough to arm hundreds of thousands of service members, everyone else should feel confident trusting it too. Police departments across the country followed that same thinking. Officer after officer, department after department, agencies swapped out older duty pistols for the P320. Then everyday civilians followed right behind them. People who wanted a reliable striker-fired pistol for home defense or daily carry looked at the military contract, looked at the police adoption numbers, and made their decision. The P320 became one of the best-selling handguns in the country, sitting in nightstands, holsters, and glove compartments in nearly every state. That kind of trust does not happen by accident. It gets built slowly, through reviews, through testing, through word of mouth between people who carry a firearm every day and take that responsibility seriously. Gun owners talk to each other. They compare notes at ranges, in online forums, in gun shops across the country. When a pistol performs well for years across millions of rounds fired by military units, police officers, and everyday carriers, that reputation spreads on its own. Nobody needed convincing. The results spoke for themselves, and the P320 kept climbing sales charts year after year. For years, the P320 earned that trust completely. Then the lawsuits started, and everything about this pistol's reputation began to shift in a way almost nobody saw coming. Here is the claim at the center of every single one of these cases. Multiple people say their P320 fired without anyone pulling the trigger. Not a slow trigger squeeze, not an accidental bump against the trigger itself. A full discharge, they say, with the trigger never touched. Think about how serious that claim actually is. Every firearm safety class teaches the same basic rule. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire. That single rule sits at the center of safe gun handling because it works. If the trigger never moves, the gun should never fire. That is the entire foundation modern firearm design rests on. So when someone says their holstered pistol fired on its own, while sitting still, with nobody near the trigger, that claim goes against everything a striker-fired handgun is supposed to guarantee. Several of these cases involve serious injuries. Some involve officers. Some involve civilians carrying for personal protection. In each of these lawsuits, the person says the same basic sequence of events happened. The pistol was holstered or sitting normally, nobody had a finger anywhere near the trigger, and then it fired without warning. No dropped gun, no snagged trigger. Just an unexplained discharge from a weapon that was supposed to stay silent until someone deliberately made the choice to fire it. SIG Sauer disputes these claims. The company maintains that the P320 meets modern safety standards and that the design itself is not defective. SIG Sauer has pointed to the millions of rounds fired safely through this platform, along with its own internal testing, as evidence that the pistol performs the way it is supposed to. The company argues that outside factors, not a design flaw, explain individual incidents. But disputing a claim in public statements is very different from winning that argument in front of a jury, and juries have not always sided with the manufacturer. A public statement gets written by a legal and communications team with one goal: protecting the company's position. A jury verdict comes after both sides present evidence, call expert witnesses, and argue their case in front of people with no stake in the outcome. Those are two very different tests, and the P320 has now failed one of them multiple times. Lawsuits take years to move through the court system, and for a long time this story stayed mostly out of public view. That changed once verdicts started coming back. In multiple cases, juries reviewed the evidence, heard from both sides, and ruled in favor of the person who said their P320 fired without a trigger pull. Those juries awarded damages tied directly to these alleged uncommanded discharges. A jury verdict does not settle a scientific debate by itself, but it does something else that matters just as much. It puts real financial and reputational weight behind a claim that used to live mostly in online forums and internet arguments among gun owners. Once a jury looks at internal testing, expert witnesses, and the actual physical evidence from an incident and still rules against the manufacturer, that verdict becomes part of the public record. It becomes something insurance companies, police departments, and future jurors can point back to. That is exactly what started happening next. This story stopped being just a legal issue between individual plaintiffs and a manufacturer. It became an institutional one. Houston Police Department pulled the P320 from active duty. Chicago Police Department did the same. The state of Washington made the same decision at a statewide level. These are not small symbolic gestures. Outfitting an entire police department with a different duty pistol costs real money and takes real planning. Departments do not make that switch lightly. When multiple major agencies independently decide to move away from the same pistol, citing liability concerns, that tells you something about how seriously they are taking the legal exposure connected to this weapon. Police departments carry a different kind of risk than an individual gun owner. If an officer's duty weapon is later connected to an unintended discharge, the department itself can face liability, on top of the officer's safety and the safety of anyone nearby. An officer carries a duty pistol for an entire shift, every single day. A weapon that might fire without a trigger pull is not a theoretical risk to an agency. It is a daily physical risk to every officer wearing that holster. These agencies are not gun safety researchers. They are institutions making risk management decisions with their own legal teams involved, weighing retraining costs and new equipment purchases against the cost of staying with a pistol under this much legal pressure. Watching 3 of them pull the same pistol from service, independently of each other in different parts of the country, is one of the clearest signals in this entire story. These departments reach the same conclusion without coordinating with each other, which makes the pattern harder to dismiss as coincidence. In early 2026, New Jersey's Attorney General filed something that had not happened before in this case: a formal, state-level demand for a mandatory recall and a sales ban on the P320. This was not a private lawsuit from an individual owner anymore. This was a state government using its legal authority to try to force SIG Sauer's hand. SIG Sauer disputes these claims as well, and as of right now, no court has ordered a recall and no federal regulator has stepped in to force one either. That distinction matters, and it is worth repeating clearly. There is currently no recall on the P320. What exists is a serious, unresolved legal fight, with a state government now formally involved, pushing for exactly that outcome. If a court eventually sides with New Jersey, that ruling would apply well beyond just that state. A court-ordered recall from a case like this could reshape how every P320 owner in the country legally has to handle their pistol. Other state attorneys general are watching how this case unfolds too. If New Jersey succeeds, there is a real chance more states file similar demands, using this case as a legal blueprint. That is the outcome this case could produce, even though it has not happened yet. And it is exactly why this story carries weight far beyond the borders of a single state. SIG Sauer's official response to all of this has stayed the same since 2017. A voluntary upgrade program. Owners can send their P320 in, and the company will modify the trigger, the sear, and the striker with a lighter design, while adding a mechanical disconnector meant to prevent unintended firing. This upgrade is free, and it typically takes around 4 to 6 weeks once you enroll. For years, this program stood as SIG Sauer's answer to the drop-fire concerns first raised back when the P320 launched. And for a long time, that answer seemed to hold up. Then, in July 2025, testing conducted through the Wyoming Gun Project reportedly produced a result that undercuts the entire premise of the fix. A pistol that had already completed the official upgrade still discharged without a trigger pull under controlled testing conditions. If that result holds up under further scrutiny, it raises a serious question. The upgrade was supposed to be the permanent solution, the answer SIG Sauer has pointed to for years whenever concerns came up. If a properly upgraded pistol can still fail the same way the original design allegedly could, then the fix itself may not fully solve the problem it was built to solve. That single test result is a big part of why this story refuses to go away quietly, even years after the first lawsuits were filed. It also puts owners in a difficult position. Completing the upgrade is still the right move, since it replaces several parts with a newer, more refined design. But it means owners cannot treat the upgrade as a guarantee that eliminates every risk. That distinction between reducing risk and eliminating it completely matters a great deal when the risk in question is a firearm discharging on its own. The P320 situation is not happening in a vacuum. Other manufacturers have faced strikingly similar accusations, and looking at how those cases played out gives you a real sense of where this one might be headed. Taurus faced a nearly identical pattern of allegations tied to its Millennium and PT series pistols. 9 models sold between 1997 and 2013. Owners said these pistols could fire when dropped or bumped, even with the safety switched fully on. That case moved through federal court for years before Taurus agreed to a settlement without formally admitting fault. A deal reported near $39 million, covering close to 1 million pistols. Owners were given the choice of a free inspection and repair, a full replacement pistol, or in some cases a direct cash payment. Ruger has dealt with comparable safety failures too, on a smaller scale. Its LCP pistol was recalled after owners reported the gun could fire simply from being dropped on a hard surface. Its SR9 pistol had a similar drop-fire issue tied to the position of the manual safety. As recently as June 2026, Ruger issued a fresh safety bulletin for its LCP Max pistol, after discovering that a manufacturing flaw could cause the manual safety's internal spring to dislodge during firing, leaving the safety lever unable to hold its position. The Taurus case is especially useful to understand here because it shows how long these situations can drag on before any resolution arrives. The alleged defects in those pistols were reported by owners for years before the lawsuit produced a settlement. During that entire stretch, owners were left in the same position P320 owners find themselves in today, carrying a firearm they trusted, while a legal process worked itself out slowly in the background, with no clear timeline for when an answer would finally arrive. The CPSC has also stepped into cases involving firearm accessories, not just the guns themselves. In February 2025, the agency recalled thousands of Holosun firearm optics after finding the battery compartment did not meet federal child safety standards. And in July 2026, regulators recalled thousands of biometric gun safes after discovering the fingerprint locks could be bypassed by unauthorized users, defeating the entire purpose of the product. Neither of those cases involved a gun firing on its own. But both show that regulators are actively watching the firearm industry right now, stepping in whenever a safety standard gets violated. Whether the product is a pistol, an optic, or a safe, none of these cases are identical to the P320 situation. But the pattern across all of them is the same. A product earns the public's trust, A defect gets discovered or alleged, and the manufacturer has to decide how seriously to take it, how fast to respond, and how far the fix needs to go. Some companies move quickly and settle. Some fight the claims in court for years. Where SIG Sauer ultimately lands on that spectrum is still being decided, case by case, verdict by verdict, with no company able to predict exactly how a jury in the next trial will rule. If you carry a P320 right now, here is where things actually stand. Legally, you own a pistol under no recall. There is no government order requiring you to stop carrying it or send it in. Practically, you own a pistol connected to multiple jury verdicts, 3 major police departments pulling it from active duty, and a state government formally demanding a recall through the court system. That gap between the legal status and the practical reality is exactly why this story creates so much confusion for regular gun owners. You are not breaking any law by continuing to carry your P320, but you are carrying a pistol with real, documented questions hanging over it, questions that have not been fully answered yet by the courts. The most direct step available to you right now is checking your serial number against SIG Sauer's official upgrade program and enrolling if you have not already. It costs nothing and turnaround runs about 4 to 6 weeks. Keep your documentation once you send the pistol in. If there is ever a dispute about the repair or the timeline, your own paperwork is the only proof you will have. There are a few other things worth doing while your decision plays out. Grabbing a different pistol as a backup without practicing with it first creates its own kind of risk. A gun sitting in a safe is not a verified carry weapon just because it is loaded and available. If you decide to switch platforms while this situation sorts itself out, take the time to actually train with the new pistol before trusting it with your safety. Confirming your own proficiency matters just as much as confirming the gun itself works correctly, and once your pistol comes back from the upgrade, treat it like a new firearm before trusting it for carry again. Run a function check. Confirm everything cycles the way it should. A repaired pistol deserves the same verification you would give any new gun before putting your life behind it. Skipping that step, because the gun is technically the same one you have carried for years, is exactly the kind of shortcut that leads to problems down the road. This is not a closed case with a clean ending. New lawsuits continue moving through courts across multiple states. New Jersey's demand for a mandatory recall has not been resolved. Every new verdict has the power to shift what happens next. A string of rulings against SIG Sauer could push more police departments to pull the pistol from service, or push other states to follow New Jersey's lead.